Hi, everyone. We're here with Sahad Rahman, who's our marketing strategist. Can't wait to hear what he has to say.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I'm glad to be here and talk with you.
Oh, no, I'm super excited because I think this is going to be an episode that people are really interested because you've got the tools, right? As a marketing strategist.
Absolutely.
Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about myself. Well, I guess my journey as in marketing. Okay. Well, I mean, long story short, when I was in university, I started to, I got bored actually of school, sort of. So I was at Ryerson or TMU, it's called now, right? So I kind of got bored somewhere around my second year of all the courses and everything. And so I started to sort of give free consultations to small businesses. So I just reach out to them and, hey, do you need your marketing updated, your digital marketing updated? So, and obviously who doesn't like free, right? Free stuff. So I started working with a few small businesses, and then eventually around my third year, I got bored again. And I was like, okay, why don't I just start applying for full-time jobs that would otherwise be for at least undergrads, basically. And I actually got a great job, like one of my dream jobs at the time, which was basically just overtaking legacy publishing company, medical publishing company, and bringing them into the digital world. So it was just open-ended. They just came in, they're like, okay, bro, you just do anything that you want. You know, you have the backing. Just do whatever you feel is right. So, so that was a little scary, not going to lie, as a kid. And afterwards, I got more into real estate marketing. And here I am.
Cool. So I know you've done it all, and for anyone, I mean, there may be people who don't really know the value of what marketing strategy looks like, and I wonder if on a very sort of high level, in the world that we live in today, where so much is digital, where so much about it is creating presence in a social media world, in our personal worlds, in our sphere. Is there any insight that you can kind of like at least create a baseline of like the type of services that you offer, the type of tools that are in your toolbox?
Right. So obviously right off the top of my mind, it's advertising, social media advertising, because I mean, Facebook, for example, has over 3-4 billion users. So you want to be on there. I mean, you're leaving things on the table if you're not on there. You don't have a presence, right? So social media advertising to, creating content, things like that, photo, video, helping out with podcasts, just like yours, for example. And on top of that, your website. Okay. Now, a lot of people overlook, especially, I've noticed realtors, they overlook their website. There are like a lot of services out there right now that provide like a generic website for you. Yeah. And to be honest with you, most of them, at least I could be wrong, but most of the services that I've come across, they give you a very basic template. You can't customize it. The SEO, the search engine optimization isn't right. So people aren't really noticing you. Okay. Now you want to really, your website is your world at the end of the day, right? So you want to have, have it be as customizable as possible. So really accentuate who you are, what you're doing, and have total control over it and make it look good, essentially, right? So that's one thing that I've noticed. Apart from that, SEO, things like that. So pretty much anything that you can think of that you can see on the screen, basically, I have my hands on.
Do you think that's where people are? Like, do you think that's where the audience is for, it's not just real estate, right? Like it's people in any sort of, I mean, I have so many people that I know who are in fitness, who are doctors, who are, in different types of sales or in small businesses who are trying to create brand value. And so they're like, okay, I got to jump on TikTok. I got to jump on Insta. Do you think that that's really important?
So the first question was, are people actually on screens, right? Yeah, I mean, especially after, the pandemic, we've realized a lot. I think a lot of people have realized that I really need to move into the digital world to stay relevant, right? Because the game has it's changed a lot over the past even decade, even 5 years, even 1 year even, right? So you definitely should have a stronger presence. And in terms of your second question, TikTok, Instagram, I think what I always suggest is getting on the platform that suits you, that suits your personality. So if you're comfortable with taking, videos of yourself through your phone, your selfie camera, TikTok is probably a better option for you. Plus Instagram Reels, because it's the same content, so you can just cross post. If you're not into doing videos, then I would suggest something like a blog, and it might sound antiquated, but if you're consistent with a blog, that helps, again, your website, that helps with the SEO and people searching you, let's say Toronto realtor, Toronto real estate agent, you might pop up eventually, on the first, even second page, right? So, if you're doing blog, that could work for you as well. Podcasts work. I mean, that's a great new platform as well. Yeah. So again, it's basically whatever you're comfortable with as a person. Again, that chimes in with who you are and your personality, basically.
Yeah. Because I know, it's often a conversation I have with a lot of entrepreneurs where they're trying to think, how can I make myself relevant? How can I compete with all this noise? I mean, you've got big organizations who have millions, billions of dollars that they can invest into advertising, right? And so they've got people feel like, oh, you've got the market cornered. But for the average person, he might be trying to establish themselves. On one hand, social media is really actually free. Our phones are more powerful than they ever were. It's like we're all carrying mini computers in our hand. So I guess one thing that I think would be really relevant for people who are watching is, throughout all the noise, right? How can someone get started to just start establishing themselves? So one thing you said was website. Having a customizable website is really important to kind of show who you are, what you offer, what differentiates you. You talked about TikTok, if you like doing videos or doing blogs. It's about putting content out consistently, I guess, in many ways.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have a misconception that to start out, you need a lot of sort of professional gear.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, I mean, we have a powerful computer. It's very powerful compared to even 5 years ago, right? It's insane how far it's gotten, and we have everything in our pockets. And to just start off, all you need is the mic in your phone, the cameras on your phone. That's all you need pretty much, right? To get started. And that's not to mention, obviously, professional gear does help take you to the next level. But somebody starting out, you don't need much. Right. And it's also, as you mentioned, it's about being consistent. I think what I've found with at least some of my clients is that, okay, so they've come to the realization that I need to be more on social media. And so they approach me. They're like, okay, so how do I get started? So I give them, a strategy in place, and they get sort of impatient with things.
Okay, this is good to know, right? Yeah. Because people are like, we live in a world where everything's instantaneous. Yeah. You post it, I want something right away. Yeah. But you said patience.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're consistent with your posting, again, no matter blog, TikTok, Instagram, wherever, if you're consistently posting, the way that I look at it is a rising tide lifts all ships. So it's like, let's say, you've been posting for 6 months, 7 months, and eventually the algorithm starts to notice you. And if it's good content, that's another thing. If you're constantly posting good content, then eventually you'll get more likes, you'll get more views, and the algorithm notices that on these social media sites, for example, right? So eventually at the 6th, 7th month mark, whatever it is, the algorithm picks you up and then basically takes you to the next level and then starts showing your other videos as well that you previously, maybe 6 months ago, posted. I was watching this one video, and they were talking about so they're solely TikTok marketers. So they work with companies on TikTok, and they were talking about how a lot of their clients were saying that their posts don't go viral on the day of posting, or even a few days. On average, it's 4 weeks into it now, apparently. So it's rising tide lifts all ships, basically. So it's just posting consistently, as you mentioned, and just being patient, but also providing good content. So that's another thing, right?
So I think that thing about content is really important because, often, TikTok started off as like people doing dances and all of these type of things, but we see it evolve, right? Where people have kind of taken over that platform and focus on things that are of value to them, whether it's providing advice, whether it's showcasing things that are important to them. And I know for me, I always found it really challenging because I wanted to provide something that was valuable content that people could say, hey, like, oh, I didn't think about it this way, or to hold space for something, which is why I really love this long form where we can actually have a conversation of, everybody wants it fast and like, okay, top 5 things, but what is it behind it, right? And here, being present, having consistency, because that will lead into like being patient and like having consistency means you don't just put it up and you expect something to go viral. You have to be putting up good quality content all the time. So you have to be thoughtful of it. It's not something like, oh, I just did this and all of a sudden it's gone all viral. It's not just happenstance. Like I think when I watch videos also, people do it slowly and then they're like, oh, how do I make this work?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has a 2-prong approach, I feel, especially if you're doing it from a brand perspective, not just individually, from a business perspective. I think the 2 prongs are educational and entertainment at the same time, right? So these 2 things, we should keep in mind. And obviously posting consistently, eventually, you're not going to get it right off the bat. Not even perhaps a month in, 2 months in, you start to hone in. Yeah. Right? You start to hone in and you start to realize that, oh, I'm doing this wrong, doing that wrong. This is how it did it. And you just keep on going and going. And you really make it tighter and tighter, basically, right? Your content, right? And I think it's really important to also focus on the entertainment aspect of it, right? Because as you mentioned, TikTok started off with just, teenagers dancing.
Yeah.
Right? So the platform has set itself up for entertainment purposes. But if you can, as a business, as a brand, come in and provide entertainment, but also teach people things over time, I think it's really important to do that. It's a 2-prong approach.
Well, I really appreciate it because I consider you sort of like the marketing guru strategist that can provide some insight of what actually works, right? Because a lot of people are like, I want to get started, and they might have like start, stop, and it's inconsistent, which is probably the number one challenge. Yeah. And they're like, I'm not seeing the results because you might. And the fact that you're like, oh, well, it takes 4 weeks for something to potentially go viral, or it takes 6 months before things get elevated. So it's the patience part. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like in terms of, I know you have supported a lot of like amazing realtors who are really top in their business and have seen a lot of great success. What are some like tips and tricks that or advice that you could provide for how people make a connection?
Well, in terms of, I actually made a list.
Oh, okay. I love it. I love it.
Like 1 a.m. last night, I was just sitting there and I was just like writing things down. But I would say let's start off with the don'ts, because I think
okay.
Start off with the negatives.
Okay, sure. Let's start off with the negatives. What you should and don't do.
Absolutely. Now, the thing is, one thing that I've noticed is especially, getting into your realtors. So I want to focus on just realtors. Yeah. Is I've noticed a lot of realtors, in terms of social media, at least, they love to put their headshots on everything. Every piece of content. Right. And Well, what you don't realize is that your profile picture is already there in that little circle above your post, so people are still seeing your face, right? Yeah. And you don't want to take up your screen real estate on the post itself with your picture, right?
Okay.
So people are already seeing your picture and your name, so you don't want to inundate them and constantly show the same headshot over and over again, right? So another thing that I've been noticing is basically using antiquated strategies.
Okay, so what's antiquated?
Okay, so I mean, again, what works for you is what works for you, right? Yeah. And I'm just putting a blanket statement here,
for
right?
Sure, of course.
So I mean, for your strategy, whomever it is, it could be right. But from what I've noticed is, like I was talking to one person, and he's been a realtor for quite some time, and he said that last year he spent a couple $1,000 on just like print mailers, and he hasn't gotten one call. And that's why eventually he reached out to me, because now it's like, I mean, more and more, I mean, people are already scrolling, they're seeing the things that they want to see on their phone or their laptop. So when they see mail, they regard it as junk mail, right? Like a lot of the mail that they find. So they just throw it out. And I think print material is starting to work less and less.
How interesting. Yeah.
Right. So that's another thing that I would suggest is, just really understand that things are really moving fast, and the way that people consume is changing as well. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. 2023 people.
Yeah, it's 2023 or whichever year they're watching it from.
Absolutely.
Right? You never know.
We'll have you back when we got an update.
Yeah. With the futuristic like suits and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in 20 years or so. So another thing is using automatic. So this is one thing that I've seen is a lot of realtors, they use automatic generic social media posting services.
Okay.
So it's like, what you do is you input your picture and your name, and then it's just like they create videos, but they're like generic videos, and you can tell they're not customized to you.
Yeah.
And what this essentially does is it drives down your reach, because the algorithms start to see that you're posting similar content to other people as well, right? Because they're just putting your face and your name on there, but it's the same post.
Okay.
Right. So the algorithm notices that, okay, you are posting the same thing as all these other people. So they just start to drive you down. They start to limit your reach because you're not interesting to viewers, right?
Because and so how does the algorithm know that it's not that interesting? Number of likes, how long people watch it for? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think they have their own little, formula set out already. And I think it's how long they're on it. And obviously engagement. I mean, engagement is huge. Sharing. That's actually the biggest thing. It's sharing. So you want your content to be shareable.
Okay.
Right. So I think the sharing has the highest amount of weight, sort of, right?
Of how people share the link.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So sharing with their friends, whatever it is, I think that puts more weight on your post.
Yeah.
Second, I would say engagement. So likes, things like that. Mm-hmm. Comments, obviously, comments a little bit higher. And then views, how long people are watching you for, how long have they stopped on the piece of content for.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. So another thing I would say is turning billboards into online ads, basically.
Okay. Right? What do you mean by that?
So, I mean, we're all familiar with sort of the billboard ads for realtors, right? It's like, thinking of selling your home?
Yeah.
Call right? Yeah. And, I've seen some realtors make the mistake of sort of just converting that into a post and expecting it to, or an ad, sort of like a paid ad on Facebook or Instagram.
Okay.
And thinking that that's going to work. That doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is like the regular billboard where they just have their name. They're like, contact me if you want to buy, sell, or lease. And then they use the exact same thing for a social media ad.
Exactly. Like the social media ads that we're doing with my clients. It's mostly providing content. It's like free, valuable content. I think that's the best course to take right now, right? Because obviously you have to provide value.
Yeah.
Right. So first you have to think of the content that targets your audience. So right now, let's say for example, you're thinking about targeting first-time home buyers, right? What you want to do is create content that is directed towards first-time home buyers, right? So you create that content and then you create an ad that sort of, you can capture leads from, right? Because you already know that they're a first-time home buyer because they're interested in that content. So they're already segmented, right? And then from there, that's when you can, think of what you want to do next. Do you want to call them afterwards? Do you want to put them in a newsletter? Do you want to da-da-da-da? So that's, open-ended afterwards.
So just don't do, it's better to be more specific than it is to be generic. That's what I'm hearing.
I would say so. And essentially it's I think, people are interested in value, like, because we're all thinking about ourselves, like no matter what, we're always all thinking about ourselves, right? So what do I get out of this? So when you're trying to capture leads, for example, from social media ads, you want to think about, what am I providing for them? What problem am I trying to solve for them?
Yeah.
Right. So again, with the first-time home buyers, for example, you might be looking to alleviate a lot of their anxieties or problems or questions that they might have. Right. So that's a great approach that I've noticed. It's been working great that I've been seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. So are those all the don'ts so far?
I've quite a few, but let's go to the do's, I guess.
Okay, let's do the do's. What should people do?
Let's turn positive, huh? So we touched on this. You want to be yourself and authentic.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I can't stress this enough. I think that's the biggest, it's such a cliche thing to say, I know, but it's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, I think some people might forget that you're trying to reach humans. You're not trying to reach robots out there.
Yeah.
And and we're looking at everything through a screen. We're looking at all these people, our friends, our whatever, everything through the screen. And in our minds, people might become it might become impersonal, sort of. So we might think, we don't, but they're sort of dehumanized if you're looking at everybody through a screen, right?
Right.
So you have to remember that you're reaching out to humans, and you have to show off your personality, sort of, right?
Yeah.
Like who you are as a person. You can't.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, right? Because what works for one person may not necessarily work for someone else, because it's like you said, if someone doesn't feel comfortable taking a film of themselves, but they're really intellectual and love writing or something, and they I can put some value add, then that will demonstrate their strength, and it'll attract. One of the things that I know is that what you put out there is what you attract as well. And so being very thoughtful about that. And for me, it's always about being authentic. This is what you get. I know I'm a total straight shooter. I'll tell people like it is. I won't sugarcoat it. In the sense of, I try to be really realistic and set people up for success by ensuring that they understand that process. That's just who I am. People all have different, people are just different, right? And so what works for someone else may not work for me. What works for me may not work for someone else. So it's I think what you said there is really important. Find what works for you.
Yeah.
Be authentic.
Exactly.
And that'll cross. If you try to do something you're not comfortable with, people are like, whoa, that looks super awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing. People, I think people have a sixth sense in terms of those things. If you're really it's good to be out of your comfort zone, but obviously still be within a vicinity of who you are.
Yeah.
But if you're fully doing something entirely different than what you're used to, I think it's people can pick up on that.
Yeah.
And also, if you're feeling uncomfortable doing, because you probably are feeling uncomfortable doing it, you wouldn't want to continue with it. And that ties in with consistency as well. Right. So you want to do things that you're more comfortable with. Right.
Yeah.
And not comfortable within your vicinity. What you right?
It's comfort within stretch your stretch zone.
Exactly. And again, accentuating your personality, because I mean, I think people forget that it's your personality that a lot of the times attracts people to you, right? I mean, usually it does. Even in business, I mean, people might forget any business. It's your personality that people remember you by, right? Yeah. So accentuating your personality, and that again ties in with your website as well, right? That you want to accentuate your personality. So whatever content that you have, just try your best to accentuate your personality as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah. So that's cool. What else is it do?
So we talked about find your niche. So that's off the table now. Consistent and patient. We talked about that. Another thing that you might think about is sharing more of your personal life. I mean, you don't have to share everything. Like, you don't have to share pictures and videos of your kids if you don't want to, obviously. Right. But perhaps a sort of curated form of your personal life. So, posting things like, great coffee that you had somewhere, or a restaurant, or what you're up to, or a trip, blah, blah.
Like, it's not just all like a hard sell of like, just choose me or something.
Exactly. And I mean, sure, it's great to talk about real estate and really establish that you're an expert in your field. Yeah. But I think it's also good to have a ratio of, your personal life, and that ties in with your personality as well. Yeah. You want to show off that you're a human. You're not just like, you're not always professional. You enjoy other things.
Well, I mean, I think, I honestly believe, like, whether you're a realtor, whether you're a business, whatever, field that you are, people want to understand who's the person behind that, right? Because what are your values? Yeah. What is it that makes you kind of like tick, right? And because that's a part of who you're working with, right? Because we bring our whole selves to every job that we do. And it's kind of knowing who's that person behind the professional veneer. Yeah. In many ways, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because there was a certain point, I think a few years ago, when people started to realize that, they had professional gear and everything. They were doing things very professionally. And then they started to realize that the vertical videos off of their selfie cameras were doing better. Yeah. Because what happened at a certain point, I think, is that, people sort of started to prefer more off the cuff videos. Yeah. Because it really shows who you are as a person. Yeah. Right. So it was very interesting to see that dynamic change.
Well, it's interesting because of that app too, Be Real. Yeah. Right? Like the Be Real one where you look at something, you get what you're looking at and then your reaction. Because you're like, what is this? Right? Like, it's always an interaction. Because whenever you post something on social media, people look at it and they'll have certain reactions. And I found it interesting that the Be Real app was like about capturing your reaction to what you're watching.
That's true. And I think you have a point there. It's basically just it's also about keeping a good ratio of personal to professional. I think that you have to sort of figure it out yourself, right?
I mean, I think that at the end of and I know there are some people who just kind of want to say, okay, I just want to have the professional presentation, and then they're like, I want to keep my private life private. But I think that it's about people getting to know your whole self. Yeah.
Exactly. And it also, again, it ties in with the algorithm, because I mean, usually from what I've seen, at least, personal posts get more engagement than the professional ones usually. Yeah. And because people like to, they like to see what you're up to. in your personal life, right? So I think it's really important.
But how do people stand out from the pack?
Stand out from the pack, I would say, just buy a Lamborghini and just pose in front of it. No, I'm kidding. I think it ties back to just accentuating your personality. That's how you stand out. Because I mean, again, it might sound cliche to say, but we're one of one, right? You're one of one. I'm one of one, right? So, and me being myself, I'm going to be the best at it. If I'm going to try to be, somebody else, Gary V or something, I can't. I can't. No, like it's
there's one Gary V.
There's only one Gary V, right? And people will pick up on that. There's no point in doing that. And I mean, you're doing your podcast right now, and if you're trying to be, I don't know, Joe Rogan or something, because he has the top most podcasts in the world right now.
No, I'm definitely not trying to be like Joe Rogan.
I think people would pick up on that, and I think it would seem very, it wouldn't seem authentic.
I think that's important. Like, I mean, a part for me is even when I do my own posts, I'm pretty mindful of how I do my posts because I want to add value. Like, I don't want to just post stuff that's just generic, like, and it's celebrating things or acknowledging things. And I mean, one of the things that I love about this podcast is I get to share my world with my audience. And I know a lot of cool people. Like, I mean, honestly, like I have really great clients and I'm like, what drew us isn't the fact that they wanted to buy a place or sell a place or lease like this commercial space or whatever. It's like, we actually had a lot more in common in terms of how we operate in the world. And I'm like, wow, I have really cool people that I work with. And I'm like, I want to tell their story because it's more than just selling something. It's like, oh, this is a new chapter in their life. And being a part of that journey is the best feeling ever. Like I, got a few texts over the past couple of days. Like, I love this place. This is the best. You really like made it so easy and knowing what their personal circumstances were, it's like really real, and saving people time, saving people heartache, saving, like it's just creating something, creating a new world, creating a new reality. I love being a part of that process. And so it's more than just a numbers type of thing. And I was just telling that to a friend. And so I think people have to figure out what works for you. Right. And so I think, I don't know. I mean, like I'm having a lot of fun doing it. Like a part of life is living it, breathing it, but enjoying it. And so even having this opportunity to chat and share our knowledge, like I'm always someone who believes in giving back. And so sharing knowledge, sharing tips, I'm not worried about I'm not that type of person who's ever worried about competition because I'm like, hey, it's like what you were saying, like the rising tide lifts all ships. If we can be better at our game, if we can do better, if we can learn more, and share more, we all gain from that. And so, I hope, my colleagues and people who are in the industry will listen and be like, okay, cool. I'm going to try that because I know a lot of times people are like, realtors, for one, I will say, are independent people. They operate on their own. They bring their own life experiences to the table. And how do you demonstrate what differentiates you?
And it's been interesting watching even bigger brands like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, trying to pretend sort of to be individuals. Like you go on their Twitter account, for example, and the way that they're interacting with people on Twitter, it's as if a person is talking to you.
Okay.
And they pay really close attention to that, because they don't want to be this corporate overlord anymore. They're starting to realize that, they're getting more engagement by being more personal. Right. So, I'm sure you've seen like a lot of, even screenshots of Wendy's doing gotchas or, comebacks at people and things like that. One brand that I personally really like, a lot of people might hate them, but one brand is a D brand. And they make skins for your iPhone or laptops and stuff. And one of the things that they did, which was really interesting, is they went on Twitter and they just started roasting people as a brand, and basically essentially they started making fun of their own customer base.
Okay,
but their customer base loved it so much. Because here was a brand, and this was a couple of years ago, you know, they were one of the first that I can think of that were doing this. They were basically, you know, making fun of people. So if for example, they found somebody and they posted like a picture of them and they're like, oh, at D-brand, you know, it sucks trying to, you know, put on your skin on my iPhone. It's not. And then they would probably reply, it's because you suck at it. You know, things like that, you know, you know, and even the person, you know, who posted the picture, they, you know, they're laughing at it too, you know, and that really blew them up. I would say they're like now, they're sponsoring a lot of big YouTubers now because they have the money for it. And they got there, I think, because they were just being really authentic, being really unique, and being really personable, you know.
And maybe breaking that mold of, oh, we're a professional company, so we should have a canned response. Like professional. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Talk to our customer service.
Exactly. Oh, thank you for reaching out. You know, blah, blah. It doesn't, I think again, it's really interesting. And I think we're going to see even more of that. Just brands, big brands trying to be a sort of an individual. So, you know, I know for a fact that, you know, you have these marketing executives for these big companies sitting somewhere and they have like an avatar of a person that their brand is sort of, you know, and they're sort of just, you know, all their content is disseminated from that now.
I mean, should this be something that's concerning, like sort of the way advertising is working? At one point in my life, I thought I wanted to go into advertisement, but then I started going, but what if I don't believe in what they're trying to sell? Right. And so that's why I kind of shifted my focus. But it's like, how can you discern? Because, you know, there's also all those type of grassroots things of, you know, people who are influencers to talk about some, like the use of influencers, like, oh, I'm just randomly using this, and this. But it's like product placement and all of those things. I mean, I know that's a bit out of scope, but just sort of like your thoughts on that.
So, well, I mean, so to recap, you're saying that, you know, you wanted to get into advertising?
No, like, I mean, it's interesting, like what you're saying about how like all these big major brands and everything are trying to go from corporate, like personas into personalized personas.
I see.
And it's kind of blurring the lines.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, hey, I'm just right here.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, fact from fiction, do people really like it? Or they just had someone who was an influencer to just do the product placement.
I think right now, I think a lot of people are engaging with it because it's sort of like seeing Zeus come down from heaven and interact with mere mortals, right? So I think that that's the huge appeal to it right now. It's like, oh, look at McDonald's, like just, you know, being a person, being a bro to me and just talking with me as if it's just my friend, right? Yeah. I think that's an appeal. But I think essentially people can see through it. People definitely can see through it. The fact that these brands are trying really hard, you know.
The population is very savvy, right? In terms of it. And I think that's why it's always so important just to be as real and authentic as possible.
Exactly.
Like, I guess what you're saying is you're calling out a marketing trend.
Yeah, exactly. It is, but I think like on a more individual brand basis, I think it's sort of an extension, you know, it's sort of, because when you're meeting people face to face, so let's say I meet you and we're talking, blah, blah, I'm just being myself.
Right.
And now I think the barrier, sort of mental barrier that we have is that, oh, social media is like this like professional thing that I have to do.
Oh, I see. Yeah, for sure.
But I think you're going to see more and more people realize that social media is just an extension.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to make it seem like we're going to be androids soon or something, you know, but I mean, that's pretty much, I mean, where's your phone at all times? It's right here with you, right?
Absolutely.
So it's within reach pretty much at all times. So your phone is an extension of you. And in return, your social media is also should be an extension of your personality.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously you should definitely curate it. Sure. Yeah. But it's still extension of your personality.
Yeah, I guess those are all things I should be better at. I mean, in terms of that, thinking of it in that way. So it's insightful. Do you think there are other ways of communicating with people
apart from social media?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people think it's antiquated, but even emails, you'd still be surprised at, how many people read emails. And again, that ties in with the fact that you shouldn't be doing generic emails. Because again, there are services I'm sure you're aware of where it's just, they just have the same content for everybody. All the people subscribe to that service, right? And they just send it out. I think it's more about sort of, again, same thing, accentuating personality. What have you been up to? And just talk about it openly as if you would talk about it with a friend. What have you been up to?
That's really interesting because I've always had a hard time with those generic type of things. I never subscribed to them. I never did these things to push out generic stuff because all of my clients are unique. And I'm like, no, this person is looking for this, or this is where these people are at. So I actually would spend a lot of time just kind of looking for their things specifically and sending them. I don't think of it as anything special, but it would be really customized to each individual person because for me, it's always a listening exercise and kind of understanding what are your needs. And I do a lot of upfront investment in that because then it customizes everything I do. Right. But I understand and so it's sort of been, things to make things fast, but I'm also a big believer that there's no such thing as a shortcut because it only leaves you short. And so I've never subscribed to those generic subscription, it just automatically sends stuff out. I don't know. It works for some people. I don't know. I just haven't done it.
Well, again, that's not to say whatever I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be working for some people.
Don't
get me wrong, because essentially marketing, sure, we like to treat it as a science, but it's also exploratory.
Yeah.
Because the entire field, it's changing constantly.
Yeah.
What I learned in university is a lot of it is not applicable anymore.
It's changed so much, so fast.
Exactly. Sure, you have the fundamentals, that's evergreen, but a lot of the things are changing so fast, right? Yeah. You have, in terms of your email, for example, I think it's antiquated, but at the same time, you can sort of make it modern. And how do you make it modern? By just being yourself and where you are in your life, right?
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's really what I believe in is being authentic, right? But constantly, I think communication is really important. That's my background is communication. And I always feel it's important, even when people don't know what's happening or you're in a waiting period to hear back. Hey, just want to keep you posted. Haven't heard anything, but I'm on it just to help people feel okay, cool. A little touch point of knowing, yep, she's on it. Just a reminder. Because I know that feeling of what's happening. Okay, where's it going? Okay, just keeping people in the loop.
Yeah.
People love that.
Yeah.
I would love that. I love that when, people who I'm working with will say, okay, this is what's happening. Okay. And understanding the process is helpful.
Right. Absolutely. I think also a lot of people might, maybe you touched on it. It's it might be seen as sleazy or fake to sort of accentuate personality, but you're accentuating, you're putting forth your personality and who you are as a person when you're meeting somebody face to face.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just, again, your whatever you're doing online, it's just, it's the same thing.
It's an extension of yourself and people get to see who you are. You're just demonstrating that.
Exactly. And personally, there's nothing bad about being your authentic self. You should be your authentic self. It's better than, just, the same, thinking of selling, call me, I think it's definitely better to be yourself.
So let me ask you something that's kind of a flip side. I know you do a lot of digital marketing. What do you think about people who don't do digital marketing, but focus on the in-person?
And you know what? A lot of, for example, a lot of realtors, they realize, a lot of them have been in the field.
Sorry.
Everything okay?
Yep.
Okay. A lot of realtors have been in the game for a long time.
Yeah.
And they have had an area that they've sort of been farming for a long time, and they have a lot of people in on their, you know, in their phone book, so to speak. And I think if it worked for them, that's great. And again, essentially, it's what works for you. If you don't want to do, if in person, if offline marketing works for you, then you should stick with that and not even bother with digital marketing, right?
Yeah, but I think it's probably like a hybrid and kind of being aware of what works, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's again, that's where somebody like me comes in, you know, and I sort of, you know, take a step back from everything and look at it from a bird's eye perspective, and, you know, look at exactly what you are doing right, what you're not doing, or what you could be doing right, you know, things like that, you know.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, you bring a lot of value, and I think that's something that I wanted to highlight because, you know, a lot of things that we think we know may be antiquated. It may not be as refined or honed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like your expertise is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I mean, and even in these past, you know, few years as things have evolved, you know, in terms of the do's and the don'ts, some tips and things that you have provided, which is really, really valuable. Where do you think the face of marketing is going if we look into the future?
It's a very interesting question, actually. That's a very interesting question because, I mean, over the past year, we've really started to see AI come in, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a lot of these social medias, especially, for example, Facebook ads, they have been using a basic level of AI to serve your ads, first determining what your ad is,
right,
and then serving it to people who they think is going to work
right, the algorithm.
Exactly, the algorithm.
Yeah.
Right. And they have been using a basic form of that for, I think, a couple years at the very least. Sure, you segment it. You know, you wanted to target it towards people interested in real estate, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But also, there's an aspect of AI, I think, that's been always there, serving it to people. Because essentially, what Facebook wants to do is have you be a return customer to them. Right?
Yeah.
So that means that your ads have to work. And so they're going to obviously hone in on exactly where to target your ads, who to target it to, right? And I think right now with, for example, ChatGPT,
yes,
right? That's been in the public consciousness recently, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think it's the next step of sort of Google. Sort of a search engine, you know, but it's more personalized. So what is it doing essentially? It's basically scraping the internet and, you know, serving you information related to what you're asking it.
Yeah.
Right. You know, on a more personalized basis. And yes, I have been using, you know, AI here and there recently and starting to get into it. And
like how have you been using it?
So, especially for example, ChatGPT or a few other AIs that I've seen, it's essentially you ask it a question like, again, using the first-time homebuyer example, what are 5 mistakes that first-time homebuyers make? Include description. Like you have to sort of be a little bit, you know, with your prompt, you have to be specific a little bit. And it literally, you can see it and it kind of scrapes it, does its thing, thinks a little bit, and then it just lists out things. And then, you know, 5 reasons and or 5 mistakes. And then with a description, like, you know. And obviously it's not a copy and paste from some article. So it's completely new, completely authentic. You know, you can just copy and paste it. But I don't suggest that because at the end of the day, again, it's like the next step of Google, of a Google search, right? So you still don't want to copy and paste because as humans, we know best, right? We still know best. So you want to kind of use it as an inspiration, as an idea generator, sort of. It's a great idea generator.
Well, it's going to be a topic, I think, of hot debate for the next little bit, right? Because I mean, people talk about all of its different uses and how long are humans going to be valuable for? I don't know. I mean, I believe that humans, have the input factors that provide multiple sensories and take a lot of awareness of different things, but which an AI can't, but it's something that we have to be really mindful of, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm seeing now is like, it's very interesting stuff. Like certain AIs, you put in certain prompts. Like for example, you put in a prompt, let's say a Vietnamese boy on a beach in Cuba with 2 dolphins jumping out of the water behind him, and it generates an image, sort of like almost a photorealistic image, almost.
Yeah. I mean, and this though, of course, brings up a lot of issues around who owns what, because they're scraping from artists who have done stuff.
Exactly.
And it's like, who does it get attributed to?
Exactly.
And is this stealing?
Exactly.
And it's like, for me, I'm very fascinated with that because it's true. The AI didn't generate that themselves. They took it from others.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have an intellectual properties conversation. We're going to have ownership rights. And it's like, even with music, let's say, how does this change the music industry? If people are like, I don't know, right? Like, it's something very interesting. Like, and in terms of marketing, if we bring this back to being authentic, being personalized, being specific, it's, if the GPT and those type of tools are very responsive, it'll really shift how marketing happens. I mean, we already see our phones, the marketing that gets geared to us is very specific to what we look for. And this, I don't know, this will just take it on a whole, I don't even actually fully comprehend the next level that it will take it to because of the customization it can do.
Yeah. I think it's open-ended exactly where it'll go, because I mean, you have, the legal ramifications, as you mentioned, you have the ethical questions as well behind it, right? So it's really hard to say exactly where it'll go, but it honestly, like, I've had a few, like I've thought about, I've had a few existential crises about it, because I'm like, as a human being, is it going to replace me? You know, but then again, I'm a human supremacist. So, I started to realize that, as long as there are other humans, as long as we're humans, we will need humans for humans.
For sure.
So essentially, I think, sure, there are going to be a lot of issues, because this is just like a very new territory because it's a leap, because it's in the new industrial revolution that we're going into, right? So it's hard to say exactly, but essentially with marketing, I think it's going to sort of, at least in the near future, I'm seeing it cut down my work time. By a lot, for example, as I said, it's kind of like an idea generator, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, essentially with a lot of, the grunt work that I do, it might, be outsourced to an AI eventually. And I'm thinking that eventually in the near future, it's my job is more going to be top-down approach. So more strategy, more and more strategy, just kind of pointing the ship whichever way I want it to, and then basically having AI do certain things.
Yeah, but what would that be? What would that grunt work be?
The grunt work, for example, is, images or copy, things like that. I mean, you still don't want to copy and paste the all the wording that it serves you with. You want to, have your own, again, with being yourself, sort of, right? For your own brand. But it can definitely be a great tool to use, and I think, rightfully so, I've been hesitant of AI before as well. And I totally understand why anybody would be.
Well, I mean, in conversations about the future, about how it's unclear, and that can make us feel uncomfortable, and some people feeling pessimistic or nervous. It's really interesting. I loved your quote in terms of the quote that you shared with me, which is your favorite quote, which is, never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to with the same weapons of reason, which today arm you against the present. Marcus Aurelius. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I said his last name right, but it's so interesting because like, I'm like, yeah, that's something to think about. Like if we're worried about the future, but why is that your favorite quote?
That has to be my favorite quote because I'm a classic warrior.
Okay.
WO warrior.
Okay.
And I have been, and it sort of grounds me whenever I think of that. Because I mean, it's especially right now, everything's so up in the air, especially, you know, look at what we've been through the past couple of years.
Yeah. With COVID,
you know, with the world, yeah, globally, you know, we've all been through something, you know, this has been base level traumatic for all of us, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And we've been uncertain about our future, about the world's future and everything. And now you have, you know, all these wars and all these things going on, and there's so much uncertainty. But, you know, I love that quote because, you know, so far we've somehow sort of kind of managed, you know, as humans sort of to just weave through and, you know, still be, you know, intact kind of. And, you know, a lot of metrics, you know, you could argue that we're actually doing better than we were 100 years ago on a global scale. Yeah. Right. So historically speaking, I mean, if you look at the trend that humanity's been going through, we're just going to continue to more or less stay on the same path. Right. Yeah. So a quote like that reminds me of that. That like, you know, be okay. Yeah, we've been good. We're going to be good, you know, and essentially, you know, you need something like that to sort of remind you and not worry about things too much. Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I think it's always really interesting, like in terms of the work, how we approach life, you know, the strategies that we employ from a professional basis, but also addressing the personal of like, well, you know what, we might not know and we might not have all the answers, because in the real estate market, a lot of people are always asking, is the market going to crash? Is the market going to like exponentially grow? And I'm like, I don't actually have a crystal ball, but here's what I do know. And here are the things that we can ground it in. And I try to ground it in pragmatic stuff. And I think this quote, what's helpful about it is like, let's use the information we have now that has supported us and brought us to here so that we don't have to worry. Like, I mean, worry is natural, but how do we, you know, we're not completely without tools. We do have tools that have helped us along this way, and we're going to be okay because we will evolve as need be. Right.
And as human beings, I mean, you know, as a realtor or, you know, on a professional level, on a personal level, any level, I think we have, I think we're much smarter than we give ourselves credit for. Yeah. Individually speaking. And I think, you know, whenever something new happens, I think we are geared towards reacting to it in the most effective way that we can. You know, obviously sometimes it doesn't work out, but I think so far we've been okay, you know, individually, you know, as, you know, globally, so far we've been more or less okay. And I think, you know, in the future, if something new pops up, like AI, for example, we'll figure it out as a collective, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate it. Look, I really appreciate you, you know, joining me today, sharing your thoughts of what things people should do, what things people shouldn't do. Any last parting thoughts that you want to share?
Any last parting thoughts? Let me bring out my do's and don'ts. Okay. I'm kidding. I'm not going to bring that out again. Well, I think essentially, were you talking about just overall or just digital marketing?
Digital marketing, whatever.
Overall. Well, if I can leave everybody with something, I think it would be that, you know, it's much easier right now to market yourself, to bring yourself forward to a wide audience than it was even 10, 20 years ago. Yeah. It's so much easier. And everything is sort of mental barrier, I think, right now. You know, right. Once you get over that barrier, that mental barrier, I think the world is right there in your pocket. So why not use it? You know, why not use it? It's right there. So I think parting thought is just everything's accessible to you now. It's much more accessible than it ever was before. So use it to your advantage.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Persistence, consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee, for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, I totally appreciate you.